We hear about the importance of diversity and inclusion all the time, but do we really know what that entails, or for that matter, what it even means? Let's have ourselves a pocket sized pep talk because I've got a guest who's more than qualified to help us sort it all out.
A Pocket Sized Pep Talk, the podcast that can help energize your business and your life with a quick, inspiring message. Now, here's your host, Rob Jolles.
Jennifer Brown is an award-winning thought leader, speaker, and author. She's been featured in the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Harvard Business Review, Forbes, and many other publications. Her firm, Jennifer Brown Consulting, is globally renowned for its diversity, equity, and its expertise in organizational change, partnering with top companies worldwide to build an equitable and inclusive future. Always happy to have a fellow BK author with us. Welcome to the show, Jennifer.
Thank you, Rob. I agree. I love the BK family.
Oh, folks, there's no other family like it. There's authors and then there's Barrett Kohler authors, and we're a different breed. But Jennifer and I have met a few times, but I'm looking forward to hearing about this book. So, if I did another podcast, I think I'd call the podcast A Book Finds You, because that's typically the way it happens for authors. And we're focusing on how to be an inclusive leader. This is the second edition, your role in creating cultures of belonging where everyone can thrive. All right. How did the topic of this book find you?
Oh, I love that idea. The work, we say in my world, we don't choose the work chooses us. So, I think a lot of us who are envisioning a more inclusive workplace where we can all feel like we can do our best work and feel safe and comfortable, it absolutely chooses us. So how did the book choose me? Well, I think that I've always been drawn to what is the gap in people's understanding of something that I think is pretty obvious in terms of the value, right? It's valuing the humans in workplaces, right? It's enabling the best contributions from those humans who are, complicated, right? And yet simple when it comes to thinking about how do we generate belonging? How do we generate workplaces that feel like, hey, I want to be here, I want to stay here, I want to grow here, I trust my colleagues, I feel purpose aligned, right? So to me, the book I think I wanted to write would demystify this thing that I think a lot of people find overwhelming, confusing, triggering, causing defensiveness, perhaps creating resistance. And this conversation doesn't need to be that. It can be one that is a wonderful and fun and interesting and deep, like exploration of the self, and also our place in our society and how to leave a legacy and leave things better than we found them. Yeah. And I think that most people get excited if you can get through the noise and get to that. People want to read that book. They want to be better leaders. They want to be more effective. They want to be around a long time. They want to be working. They want to be relevant. They want to pivot and respond to the changing world around them. But there are a precious few, I think, number of books that really meet people where they're at and say, hey, we're going to walk this together.
Right. Have you, was there a moment where you needed to walk together with someone else? In other words, was there kind of a defining moment where you went, I've been touched by this and I need to get this out. I need to get this said.
Yeah, I think, I think younger talent and talent who's underrepresented in the workplace, those communities, while we have our own struggle, and I'll say we because I'm female, I'm cisgender, my pronouns are she, her, but I'm in the LGBTQ plus community. So, I've had many years of being in the group that's trying to be seen, right? Okay. Trying to have equitable treatment, trying to better our workplaces so that they can be better for us. But I think that the way I can be the most of service, really, and this is what has kind of come to me, is not from that place. It's actually from the place of being cisgender and, white skin and white identifying and other identifiers of my own background, my socioeconomic history, the education that I have, lots of different things that make me who I am that I think enable me to be a certain kind of messenger for a message that where the messenger matters. We know as humans, we sort of are more open to receiving information from people that look familiar, people that we think are, I don't know, share our background. And so I think that kind of clicked in, and I thought to myself, well, where can I be of most service? Because I think I love all kinds of conversations. I love all kinds of audiences. And I always feel very connected and almost one of many different kinds of audiences. But I think this is the one, if I could say the leaders, and particularly of a certain generation, honestly, I'm Gen X. So I think that we grew up as leaders, understanding the world in a certain way, and that what's being asked of us now and the opportunity is so unfamiliar. It's so clunky. It's very, it's difficult, and it feels like a minefield for a lot of people. And I don't, occasionally it has felt like a minefield for me.
Right.
So I'm literally writing books that help me, to answer your earlier question, help me puzzle through my own journey. And that's
Right.
why I came up with the model in the book, because I wanted to make sense of, well, what does this evolution, what has it felt like for me? Where am I? And what does
Right.
that map look like? And maybe that map would be helpful to share with other people. And it turns out that it really has.
Wow. Well, that's what I was looking for. So now I got the authentic side, because it's true. People, I'm sure they come to you as an author. They come to me and go, I've always wanted to write a book. I've dreamt of writing a book.
Mm,
Maybe you can help me write a book. And I say, okay, what do you want to write about? They go, Dad, I don't know yet. And
mm.
it's sort of like, well, it kind of
Help.
starts there, and usually there's something that's we need to say, or we need to share, or we need to have
Yeah.
others experience. And that's where maybe we'll do this together. So, a book finds you typically comes from, it just wasn't, I don't know, I threw a dart at a dartboard, and that topic came up. There's usually a little bit more behind it. And look carefully, folks, because if you'll find it early in the book, and then you might not see it again.
Well,
So you
that's true
gotta look
too.
for it.
It's true. It's true.
Uh,
I think to be so vulnerable and personal in your writing is so important, not to just write from the head, but write
right,
from the heart. And I teach so much that sometimes I can get a little technical, right? I can get a little teachy, or, have a whole kind of leadership, thesis. But then I would go through my writing and think, well, what does this mean to me? Why is this a pain point for me? Why did I have my own story around this where I evolved? And
right,
how can I write about that? And I think that makes the best books, because you've got this somebody who teaches something and knows it backwards and forwards, but you've also got somebody that's not afraid to say, hey, I'm a learner too. And
right,
let me level with you. Like, let me be with you as we figure this out together, is a very different like energy than I think a lot of like quote unquote thought leader guru type writers, who we read them to be illuminated by their brilliance.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
I would love to be that, of course, but I think that you make a more lasting impression when people feel you're extremely real. And
right.
so I hope that works for our readers.
I'm sure it will. I know as you deliver seminars, as do I.
Mm.
The parts of the seminars where you can really feel that you're touching that audience at an emotional level is when you're delving into your not I read this somewhere, or I've observed this somewhere.
Mm.
I experienced this somewhere. And I'll tell you one other fast story. I'm not telling you which book now, but I will tell you one of my books. I wrote so many stories about me that the editor, a Barrett Kohler editor, said, this is really good, but a few too many stories about you.
TMI.
I had to. So there's a few stories in there that start off with, I knew a guy who, and that might be about me too. It just wasn't that day because it
I
was
have a
too good a
friend.
story.
I love it.
All
I
right.
love it. It's so
Uh,
good. But yeah, that's really good advice for everybody to just, and
it
some, like you
is.
say, some of us that's going to be very easy for some of us and really hard for others.
Right. Well, you got to get out of that head. Okay, you
Mhm.
wrote the book. I did some snooping around on this book, and
Mm.
I'll tell you, I felt a little sorry at first. I said, well, this is the second edition. Let me see when the first edition was, and
Mhm.
I jumped on the second edition, and there are a handful of reviews, folks. It just came out in October, came
Yes.
out recently, and I went, well, poor Jennifer, we'll have to beef that up. And then I looked at the first edition. I went, Oh, not so poor, Jennifer. We got close to 600 reviews there. I mean, there's a lot of reviews, heavily reviewed. What's impressive to me is, if I've got the timeline right, it looks like it came out in 2019. It went to a reprint in February of 21. And here you are with a second edition in 22. From being in the book world since 1993, I got to tell you, that's fast. And that's a compliment to the author when we see editions moving that quickly. Why now? Why was now the right time for this second edition?
Well, the last 4 years, I have evolved, right? I have completely, I think the quantum leap we all have experienced in the last couple of years, of understanding, of awareness, of empathy, of anger, certainly, of specificity. When I went through the pages, and really, this, you write the book in 2018, which comes out in 2019.
Right.
So, I've just matured so much and made so many new connections, especially because I taught this topic for maybe, 200 talks or something over the pandemic, all virtually, and really witnessed how the audience was responding to the concept and where they had questions, where they needed more clarification. So when you have a second edition and you're a speaker, you can take all that data, all that Zoom chat data, and really incorporate it, tell those stories, make things much sharper, make things more hard hitting, task the reader, I think, with more. Our appetite is different now for this conversation than it was. We all have pivoted. We've all struggled in different ways, in new ways. Our empathy for ourselves, our courage in sharing our own stories and our own identities has changed. And then our knowledge about each other has deepened. Strangely and paradoxically, even though the pandemic separated us, I still think there was a depth that some of our relationships went to that was unprecedented. And then, of course, what we were watching, from the murder of George Floyd to Asian hate to, anti-Semitism now, and there's so many other isms that a lot of us are feeling very deeply. It felt the book needed to be updated. It needed to be more hard hitting, more contextualized in this moment. And my team and I, had this amazing opportunity to update the stories. I don't know about you, but I don't want to read something from 2019. Like, the world changed, so for me, even as a reader, I'm wishing that some books from the before times were updated by some of my favorite authors, because I know things have changed for them. Right. So this was my editor at Barrett Kohler's idea to do a second edition, and we could have written a whole different book and a new book, actually. But I wasn't done with the model in the book. I thought this model really has staying power. This model is, I hope, timeless. I hope a tool that people come back to again and again and see new things in it. And so I didn't want to leave it. I just wanted to keep kind of pulling the thread, and people are really responding well. I think I was warned that, people aren't going to be interested in a second edition because they're going to assume it's the same. We have not had that experience at all. People they want to hear more from me. They want to get something new from me because they've been listening to me for the last couple of years. I mean, they want to know what's on our hearts and minds because we're thought leaders in the space. And so I honestly would recommend this. It's a wonderful exercise for authors to really sharpen your saw. So you sharpen that pencil, look through your old work and say, could I make this better? Could I fill in the blanks? Could I give it more context? Could I make it more of a call to action? Because the world needs action. It doesn't need more thinking and pondering and, oh, I feel bad, or I regret this, or boy, whatever. I have a lot of empathy now. I mean, to me, it's now about shifting systems around us. And the book is full of ideas about how to do that. And that's really what we need most.
Right. And you're also being a little bit modest, because it's all well and good, but you have to have a book that resonates, that's clicking, that's connecting with people, that's got 500 plus reviews on it, to have that conversation with an editor, because I'm very proud of my children. I mean, my books, but they're all living a life of their own, and some of them are in multiple editions, and some of them I'd love to be in multiple editions, didn't quite make it to the line. But I remember my first book, thank goodness, they allowed me to continue to update it all. I learned my lesson, wrote a book about seminars, how to run seminars and workshops. And when I wrote that book, I was telling you where to stand next to an overhead projector. Make
Oh
sure
my
if you're
goodness.
left-handed, you want to get on the right side so that you just know. And then the fan is going to blow off the sheet, but we're going to go
No.
underneath the
The
transparency.
transparency, you
Oh, it was
mean?
brilliant
Oh, wow.
until it wasn't.
Oh,
And
we're dating
and
ourselves right
oh
now.
yeah, well that was 93. It wasn't that.
Yeah.
I guess that was a long time ago.
Yes, it
Wasn't
was.
that long ago? But I learned my lesson to by the time I got to the fourth edition to stay away from the technology completely and go, you want to be seen, you want to be heard. I didn't want to call out a product anymore. But a congratulations to you. You don't
Thank
get
you.
to a second edition, certainly not that quick without a book really hitting. And one other thing that you brought up, I just want to put a flashlight on it.
Mm,
You get up there and you do those deliveries and you deliver and you deliver, and you're not afraid to keep taking notes and keep saying, that's working. That's not
always.
quite working. That phrase is connecting. I can see it in that audience's eyes. We as authors, if we're not in front of an audience, we can't see it. But in a seminar,
Mm.
you can. I call that ring work. And
Oh,
just so you
beautiful.
know, anybody who's listening, when you hear talented authors and speakers like Jennifer, you're hearing somebody who's not afraid to continue to question and figure out, I said it wonderfully, but if I can say it better, I will. We don't stop taking notes. We're very subtle about it, but we're taking our notes. And that's how
Always.
we go from good to great, in my opinion.
I love that. I've never really thought about it that way. I mean, for example, uh, so as we're talking about allyship so much in the audience, the feeling you get now is there's so much interest. There's just it's more the how that folks get stuck on. So the shift in energy, right? The shift in appetite is that the audience, many audiences at least that I get to work with are mostly, not everybody, working with me, to dig into it, to uncover, to explore together, to learn new things, and so I think what I want to serve up to people is different in order to meet people where they're at, which is different than where they were.
Right.
And one of the elements I meet people at differently is the element of privilege or advantage. It has been so, I think, applied so sort of as a blunt instrument to, I don't know, express anger around certain people, but has had the sort of adverse effect of pushing people away from what they can contribute. So,
Right.
so even being on stage and talking about my own story of the path that I've walked and the tailwinds that have sped me along in life, it normalizes speaking about that. And the audience, all of a sudden, you can feel people saying, oh, wait a second, she's making me feel comfortable. And she's the first speaker that I've heard, welcome me in, invite me, equip me with an understanding of to see myself, not as a bad person at all, but to see myself as an actor in this movie, that is happening. And so anyway, I love picking up on those things and giving more and more and more and
Right.
feeding that because look, go where there's an appetite. I think sometimes, too, when I thought about books I could write, I thought about what niche could I be in where there's not a crowded field and it's already been said. And it's already been said a million different ways. I really wanted to write something unique too. And I hope that I achieved that. But it's just, I think you're always cognizant of, I wouldn't say the competition, but does the world really need another book on X, right? And we have to be careful not to shut ourselves down in the creative process too by saying, does the world need another book on X, right? Because I always say to people I mentor, your book will be different. You will put your stamp on it. You will make it personal. It will involve your story, your take, your point of view. It's always going to be unique. So, while we don't want to let that stop us, I still think that, like you say, we need to be calibrating all the time to say, so where's the gap that is persisting that nobody's really addressing and am I passionate about that? I think that's the other piece because you have to really care. It's not just, an intellectual exercise about like, so what's missing on the bookshelf? But
Right.
I think there really has to be something very personal
Right.
because you know how hard it gets to persist through the book writing process. And you've got to want to solve this problem that you take on, that you write about. Like, and for me, solving this problem means a better world for, the earlier me, right? The earlier me that really struggled, the earlier me that would have appreciated the allyship that I am now trying to create and write about and kind of birth, because I was the one on the outside. So it's very easy for me to write, here's what I want to see, here's what I want to experience, here's what I want other people to experience. And don't
Right.
you want to be this person? And I try to make it irresistible too.
Yeah.
I think we have to really embed everything we write in somebody's careabouts, right? Imagine what is going to strike them, and where are they struggling with, and what answers can I give vis-a-vis that? And if you can marry all of that, I think you've got a home run.
Absolutely. And the one word you punched more than once is the word passion.
Mm,
You gotta have passion. And
mhm.
as a speaker, I actually watched some of your presentations, and made me smile because you're passionate. You own it. It's part. This is not something you've decided. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. I'll talk about this one today.
Can you
Um,
imagine?
well,
Well,
I,
actually,
I
it's
I
probably
don't
pretty
want
common.
to. I don't want to, but we've seen it. And the funny thing about professional speaking is when somebody's passionate and owns it, you know it, and when they don't, you know it. So there's no place to hide.
Mm,
But that I'm it's my own opinion here, but I think speakers make great authors
mm.
because we tend to write similar to the way we speak. So my wife will walk by me while I'm writing and she makes fun of me occasionally. That's why I tend to be in another room because my face will actually be moving the
Oh.
way to what I'm writing. So my eyebrows will go up, they'll go down, my mouth will move up a little down because I'm actually having that conversation in a sense.
That's right.
And I'll bet you don't even know it, but you do it too,
Mhm.
because some of these phrases are familiar and you're in that moment. So anyway, just getting to know you and listening to you makes me smile because I really do think that I love to hear an author, and I don't want to prompt the word, but at some point, tell me why you're passionate about this book. Because now I'm passionate about this book. Now I want to get this book. And my audiences know I'm a little annoyed about this, but I don't want to just get the book. And I don't want somebody giving me the book. I want to get the book so I can put a verified review on that website. And let's beat that 500 and whatever it is number on the first one and double down and go even higher.
Thank
It's
you.
it's a book that people need to read. So let's talk. Let's climb into it a little bit. You think that for for leaders, they have to become more inclusive.
Mm.
Sure. Are there? I'm an ex Xerox guy, So there's I want to do this, and then there's process behaviors to do certain things I can measure a little bit. Am I reaching too far? Are there actual process behaviors behind this other than wanting to do it?
Yeah, thank you for that. I'm a leadership geek. I think about change management. I think about the reasons people change and how it feels to change. Very challenging, right? Around anything, building a new habit, eating better, being healthy, saving money, any habit that we build that is difficult at first, and then we gain momentum and we begin to see the fruits of our labor. I do think in the muscle of inclusive behaviors is there to be built. But it takes practice and consistency and application and experimentation. And
Mm,
so leaders, so we can study, we can wake up, right? We can study, we can begin to collect information, we can begin to notice ourselves and kind of step outside of ourselves and see ourselves in a system, see ourselves maybe benefiting from a system, right? Because it works for us, and maybe starting to understand who it doesn't work for. Um, and then we can begin to say to ourselves, so how would I lead? Because to me, leading isn't just knowledge or learning about, it is activating. So leading is showing up, leading is pushing yourself, getting comfortable, being uncomfortable. So it is having a new conversation. It is noticing and seeking out mentees that don't identify as we do, as I do. It is broaching new difficult conversations about diversity, equity, and inclusion issues and questions, and asking people and being curious about, what is your experience? What can you tell me? How can I be helpful? What kind of support do you need? What do I still yet need to learn? What am I not seeing? So there's so much inquiry and observation and then action. And the action, though, is I think where people get stuck. It's like a lot of people are like, okay, I know I need to do this. My company's going to measure me on it, which, by the way, is happening and has already happened in some companies. And if it hasn't, happened for you, listener, it probably will. You will be measured on your ability to create the experience of belonging around you. And probably that will be measured by people that identify differently than you do. So then the challenge is, okay, I've learned, okay, some people are having this experience. Some people are having this experience. This identity triggers these things in the world. I've never experienced that. That person has experienced this or may have experienced it. We begin to open the aperture. We begin to consider these things. And then we choose to be a part of improving that. And now not everyone's going to choose that. Some people are going to be forced to look at this because of those measurements that are coming down the pike or maybe already happening. And others of us are experiencing like the pain of and the awkwardness of not knowing what to do, what to say, not just in the workplace and on our teams, but in our families, with our partners, with our communities. We're struggling to sort of be relevant, to have the framework, the knowledge, the language, the skill to interact in this time, which is very different, is extremely dynamic, is extremely diverse in all of the inputs that are coming at us. And we're realizing we're behind. We're realizing that we don't have the skills. So, how I don't really care how folks get there. Sometimes I'm like, look, if the business case is what resonates with you and you want more customers, or you're losing clients or talent and you're wondering why, and you're getting feedback that it's because people don't feel that this is an environment that's inclusive of them. If it's an aha moment where your kid tells you something and now all of a sudden your whole life has changed because you need to support your kid in a different way. Or you're getting bad feedback and somebody says, look, you change or you're out. All of these things, or some of them, or one of them, could be the instigator. I don't honestly care so much because I honestly think we can debate all day whether, oh, Jennifer, I agree with who you are or I don't, right? We can go down that road, but I don't know if it's all that helpful. I don't think it's very relevant because honestly, how you lead in an organization can be very different than what you believe.
Right.
Those can be two things that exist. When you show up in an organization, your commitment is to generate results. If your commitment is to do that, and you need to know how to be expert at doing that from a diverse group of people, that is it. That is literally what it is. So if you need to be good at that, then it's a skill you can practice and you can develop. And I think I would say we develop it through trial and error. We develop it through saying things like, look, I'm learning. I want to be better at this. I'm going to miss a lot of things. I want to know so I can be better. Please tell me. It's not just, oh, my door is open, but it's literally like proactively seeking this because I need to know this so I can lead more effectively. And putting the personal values kind of aside, I can't teach that. Maybe, I don't know. We can't get too big for our britches, as authors, and think that we can I'd like to believe I can change hearts and minds, but I might drive myself crazy.
Yeah, maybe you can't teach it, but you can inspire people to accept it, to open their eyes a little bit. Don't, it's like parenting. You're right. If you tell your kid, do this, it might not happen. If it becomes their idea, if they see a model that's working, in the sales industry, we have something we call a WIFM. It's an acronym that stands for What's in It for Me.
Love it.
And it sounds like a terrible thing. It actually isn't. A lot of times when we're asking somebody to accept change, the underlying theme is maybe, but what would be in it for me to do that? If I can understand that, then maybe I'll be more open to your ideas. As a person who delivers seminars, you may not even realize it. I guarantee you're an unconscious competent, but you don't just go, hi. What is diversity? Diversity, you get in there and you set that topic a little bit until you've got an audience going, you know what, I think I see value here. And then we go into the meat of our material, but we don't go in so deeply. I think you're probably very unconsciously competent at that. I'm just making, now you're a conscious competent. I'm making you aware of what you do. And I actually saw it in some of the things that I was looking at you online. What's cool about your topic, and I don't know whether you're after this or not, but as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking, why aren't parents paying attention to this?
Yeah.
Why aren't coaches paying attention to this?
Yes.
The coaches take pride. You'll hear a coach say, well, he's a, or she's a player's coach, and they'll give them labels. To me, as a guy who coached over 50 teams, I immediately think, well, I'm not a very good coach, because I have to identify, sound familiar, each player, what motivates or demotivates that player, and realize that I'm really coaching to who they are emotionally. If I want to win ball games, that's how I'm going to get evaluated. Sound familiar?
Sounds familiar. Every executive, I tend to work mainly with executives, is different, just like those players.
Right.
And you've got to meet people where they're at. And you've got the typical bell curve. You've got the leaders, the learners, and the laggards, as my friend Chuck Shelton terms them. And it's really apt. And I would never speak to the leaders in that equation the same as I would speak to the laggards. They're going to hear different things. They're going to need different information. They're coming from a different place. And I've got to kind of do the 1.0, 2.0, 3.0 version. And it's really challenging, because when you have that diversity in a room, you may not have the kind of diversity we think of, right? The ethnicity diversity, the gender diversity. You may see a lot of faces that look the same, but there's a lot of diversity of people's attitudes and backgrounds and beliefs and skill level and want and motivation, like you said, or an understanding of what's in it for me. So I think the neat part of this work is it just is constantly challenges you as a teacher to phrase things in a certain way, or to discover a way in. And you have to have I always think of this like having 15 arrows in my quiver, and sort of pulling them out and, being like, so what, I wonder, what I'm dealing with here, because often we don't actually know either. So I walk in cold to a lot of rooms, virtual or in real life. And I may be prepped, and we try to make sure that I'm prepped, but sussing out, so who's going to resist in here? Who's going to be a champion in here? Who's going to be very silent and you don't know what they're thinking? And after a while, you can read your audience so well, and you can make a lot of educated guesses about what you're dealing with. And there's a lot of, in the leadership space, it's like, do I go after the laggards? Like, do I go after the folks that are totally asleep and really not even interested, or are not opening their eyes and looking at themselves humbly as learners, even though they may be extremely senior. I think we make a big deal about people with the big job titles, right? And I think we drink our own Kool-Aid, and we think that we're done evolving. And I think we look at our promotion and our seniority, and we say, well, clearly I'm great at what I do. And then I come in and I say, well, actually, you're terribly incompetent at this. And by the way, it's going to be one of the biggest differentiators that you will ever have, right, if you develop it. So, and so sometimes I get into tussles with leaders in rooms, and it's interesting to me. I'm like, because I'm there to teach and impart what I know and what I see from best practice companies from all over the world. And yet people will fight you. They will literally, just battle it out with you about, oh, Jennifer, this is just trendy, or, oh, I can't change my language like that, or, oh, this is overwhelming and I'll never be good at it, or, oh, where does it end?
Right. You
That's my
want a tip
favorite.
from a seminar leader on that, by the way? I'll give
What'd
you
you
a quick
say?
tip on that. Yeah. Assuming it's not a keynote, you're going to have a little bit of time with them. It's instinct versus logic. The instinct is
Oof.
to when you hear that and it comes out before you can even grab it, is to throw some sort of passionate response back of, well, and you light up and you give them your best answer, and it's not going to budge because they've just made this statement in front of other people. Rarely will somebody go, well, when you put it that way, what was I thinking? So
True.
what we pros do is we go, okay, you
Okay.
kind of leave them alone, get to
Yes,
the
you do.
first break, and as it clears off, that's when you can have a private little conversation. Hey, I noticed it's such and such. How's this material, related? And that's when you usually get a story that's a little bit deeper, and sometimes it's I didn't want to be here,
Sure.
but we can hear that and work with that, and they'll respond to, how about we do this? I might be able to offer this. There's a couple job aids. I'll bet you'll get an idea.
Mm.
Give it 20, and there's a reasonable conversation to be had. Try that in front of the room when the instinct says, fix it with kindness, and it'll never work. So, yeah, I do a lot of work during breaks. That's when
Yeah,
I
I
am like a
remember learning
nudnik.
that as a
Yep.
trainer before I ever did DEI. I watched the people I learned how to train from and deal with the resistor. Um, on like just not even DI, like just other topics we were trying to teach. And the break conversations are wonderful because I think understanding the source of resistance is really important. And because then you can kind of give a remedy, like you can treat it with the right medicine. If you don't know what's really going on, and what presents in the room is often not at all, like you just said, illustrative or enough information. And you're right
Right.
that the peer pressure is so strong in rooms, particularly executive level, that you are not dealing with this thing and you can't wait for the break, because if you get a break, sometimes I'm in and out and I never have a chance to really
Right.
like shift that person and have them
Right.
show up differently in the room.
Right.
And especially if they're a leader, I'm always also cognizant of the power in the room, because that person, if they happen to be also a very senior comparatively, it can really, really sidetrack the whole learning process
Oh
for a
yeah.
group of people.
Oh yeah.
Um,
It's we refer to them as snipers in the business,
yeah,
and
yeah.
again, a
Mm,
lot of times, just I'm going to throw a couple ideas, and then I would come off this. But one, always remember the first one's free. That's a philosophy of mine. Sometimes people say things the wrong way, and
yeah.
immediately we go, "Okay, well here it is," and so now I'm going to deploy the weaponry. No, Pam. Uh,
Give
thanks.
them a pass.
Sometimes I'll rename it or whatever. We'll move on. You get
Sure.
hit twice, we know what's in the room.
Mm,
If you can't get to a break, what I like to do is typically relay, meaning, okay, I'll rephrase whatever they're saying in terms
sure.
of, okay, so what I'm hearing is, and then I'll put it in a kind of bucket, and then sort of just turn my shoulders and ask the room, how do some of the rest of you feel? And the whole room could be walking in against this topic. Nobody will if it's a sniper, nobody will jump on there. It's kind of embarrass them. They'll sort of say, well, I just wanted to hear that. And they'll kind of handle it. And
Mm,
remember, we're just trying to survive right now. But I know one thing,
mm.
I can't go do what I want to do, which is go directly right back at you and go, oh, yeah. Well,
No, no, no.
yeah,
You do
we know
not want to
that that's
square
not
off.
going to work.
No, because then you lose face.
Right,
But I think I felt love what you're saying, that turning the attention to the room,
right,
usually groups correct themselves.
right,
They do. And so when you manage the sniper and then you welcome other feedback to the concepts, you will invariably, hear positive takes on things. You will invariably, somebody will step forward and fill that void and share something that is on track. And so, yeah, letting the group sort of find its way
right.
is a wonderful thing to watch. And then as a facilitator, you're just guiding, you're sort of nudging, you're
Yep.
stepping back, you're letting other people kind of take it and make the case or put the color to something or the context around something. It's fascinating. I remember my group dynamics class I'm sure you took one in like my master's program in
Right.
facilitation. And you learn a lot about the energy in a room and where it shifts and how to shift it, and how to ensure a diverse group of learners, each person gets something of value. Like that's always my
Right.
goal. And to manage manage the derailers so that we don't deprive anyone in that room of what they came to get, and so, but it's a really interesting, not only do you have to be a subject matter expert, but you have to be an expert on dynamics
Yeah.
between all the humans and all the politics that may be going on. It's a lot.
It's a
A lot.
lot. And, where we're actually talking about probably the most difficult part of presenting is this. It doesn't really get any worse than this.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, most people, as long as you don't directly attack back and you are civil about it, will typically be quiet, quiet down. The only other thing I try and remind people is there's no quota system, meaning if we've got somebody that really doesn't want to be there and is struggling a little bit, and we've relayed, we don't have to ask them any more questions. They're probably not going to put up their hand for a whole lot of answers. Let's just leave them alone and get our job done. All right,
That's
let's
right.
but I want to jump back into this book, and we now return to Jen's
I love
book,
that thread though. That was so
How to
fun.
Be an Inclusive Leader, Your Role in Creating Cultures of Belonging Where Everyone, I repeat, everyone
That's
can
right.
thrive.
That's
Good. How's it doing?
It's doing so well. It's everybody that bought the first edition is buying the second edition.
Yeah,
Like I said, I think people are hungry for everything and anything. I
right,
just think the people who buy my book typically are buying a couple hundred copies for their leaders. And then what typically happens is maybe I come in and speak or whatever, but what I really love is when little book clubs are reading it.
yeah,
When I really love when there's some sort of facilitated process where leaders then read and get together, discuss, and that's facilitated sometimes by us, but oftentimes by somebody internal. Because it needs to be a conversation about that's embedded in the culture of that workplace. That's really
right,
important. And so sometimes it does make a whole lot of sense to like have some remarks by me, but really to have somebody internally say, well, what does this mean here? Like
right,
what are we missing here? What could we be doing more of or differently? Or how do we want to hold ourselves accountable here for the concepts in Jennifer's book?
right,
I love that. So if I can
right,
hear the feedback to say like, well, we're discussing it and people have action plans and they've applied your model and they took the assessment and we're going to check in and see how else we can support them and like that's what I really like to hear. I mean, I don't care so much whether, I get to come in. It's that they're getting value, they find it readable, quick, applicable, that their leaders are talking about it, that they're applying it around the country, the company, and the world. That's
right,
another really cool thing. I think it's actually a pretty simple book to be understood in other languages, in other cultures. It wasn't so, I guess, if I could say, American in focus. A lot of the DEI conversation can tend to be extremely specific to our history. So my take though, as an org change person and as somebody who thinks about the individual development is the model can be applied anywhere. It's an evolution model. It's a progression model. It's a maturity model. So actually it doesn't even need to be applied to D&I. It's a change model.
right,
So it could be used, you could look at it and see the individual in it. You could see the whole organization in it. If you want to, I get the question often sort of, well, Jennifer, where are we as a company? And, I haven't written that book yet. But where are we as a company is a question then that my consulting team would specialize in answering. And that would
right,
take time and data collection and, all the things we do to understand kind of like as a company. But the companies are made up of people, and so I just happen to kind of think the individual work is really fascinating these days.
yeah,
And I don't know why it's so fulfilling to, I just love seeing the aha moment. I love seeing the light bulb go off. I love kind of if we could sort of be the instigator for creating more executive level leaders who know what they're doing, who know how to speak about it, who are admired. People feel that they trust them, that they are taking actions that touch thousands of people.
right,
That is to me, if I can help that leader create that ripple effect that creates a better experience for somebody who's just getting started, somebody who is just kind of grappling with maybe their identity, maybe, being closeted, maybe, feeling less than. and
Right.
having been made to feel that way, but
Right.
coming into a workplace where you can feel seen and heard by a leader who may not look like you, but who has done their work. I want to stay at that company. I want to
Yeah.
stay there. I want to grow. I want to do everything I can. I want to give extra to
You
that.
want to be in that family. I got
Yeah.
scolded once at Xerox when there were some layoffs, and I said, I thought this was a family. And my
Mm.
manager called me and he said, this is not a family. This is a corporation. We're
Oh,
going to take
goodness.
as much as we can from you. That happened
Oh,
some years ago. Now I'm going to be 30 years as an entrepreneur. So that
oh,
was
wow.
about 30 and a half years ago. But
Sure.
I got to tell you, after that speech was delivered, I said,
Mm.
oh, okay. Well, then I guess I'm going to leave because I
Mhm.
want to be in a family. I like
Yeah.
my I like a family. And
You're
a
in your
family
chosen
meeting, we
family
won't
now.
always be perfect, but
Yeah.
we care about each other.
Yeah,
Jennifer,
that's
I want to also compliment you on something else that is really important. And we're going to wrap it up now. But
mm,
to me, the heart of a good book or a good speaker, and I'm going to use a word you didn't use, but you're all over it,
mm,
is listen, we love writing books. We love talking to groups of people. It's very exciting. But when people implement what we're talking about, and if your book and your ideas aren't being implemented accidentally,
mm,
you've built a path, you have job aids, you have different things that you're creating. When you can implement what it is that we have this passion about talking about and trying to help people with, uh, it's moving to me. And many books, it's not a requirement, but I immediately look for a book that won't just inspire me and motivate me and entertain me and give me an idea or two. Sounds like a seminar, doesn't it?
mhm.
But actually change the way culturally the way I'm thinking about something. And the only way to do that is to go beyond the words and offer thoughts and ideas on how to actually implement what we're talking about. And that's exactly what you're doing, and that you should be applauded for.
Thank
Truly.
you. I really writing should feel like it's like ripping your heart out like every moment,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it should feel that way. And that's why it's so
Right.
hard, but that's
Right.
why writing is the ultimate kind of clarifying experience. It
Right.
sort of gets right to this is my message in a bottle.
Yeah.
And if I never get another shot at showing somebody something or shining a light on something, whatever, like at least they'll have this. And you have to believe in that so deeply.
Yeah.
And really every word matters. And I choose every word
Every
intentionally.
word
And I also
matters.
think to myself,
Yeah.
am I being boring? Is this something I'm being lazy with my writing? Like, is there a way that I could illustrate this differently? I love words. So
Right.
always thinking about, well, they've heard it this way before. Could I refer to it differently? Could I tell a different story? Could I get in there and not be dismissed? Because this work has been dismissed for so long. I mean, it's just been dismissed as unimportant, nice to have. Oh, there's just people complaining, So I'm writing against, like, knowing that this topic is diminished in
Right.
importance, and therefore, like, to bring that lens into every word on the page to say somehow, to I don't know, through sheer force of will and belief, that has to come out because I know the battle that I'm waging. I
Right.
know, and the battle is against apathy. The battle is against comfort, um, status quo, fear of change,
Fear of change.
scarcity.
Say that one again. Say that one again.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a big one.
it's a
It's a big
lot.
one.
It's a lot. So thank you for I feel very seen. I appreciate you.
Well, you bet.
Appreciating me.
Listen, I got my little pocket-sized pep talk. Jennifer asked me, as many guests do, how long you think we'll go? And I say 30, 35, but under my breath, I'm always thinking, as long as it's interesting, how long we're going. We could
Thank
keep
you.
going, but I'm gonna bring us in for a landing
No
and
worries.
tell you, well, you're terrific. I really enjoyed the conversation. Let's go with this one. How do people get a hold of you?
Thank you. So it's called How to Be an Inclusive Leader, the book. The second edition has a blue cover versus a white cover. So check it out at Amazon, all the places you buy your books. It's doing very well. I keep seeing it in like airport bookstores and things, which is wonderful. I have a podcast called The Will to Change. So we really flesh out a lot of what we talked about, have amazing guests on. So check that out. I'm on all the socials. I'm on Twitter so far. We'll see.
So
I'm at Jennifer Brown on Twitter. I'm at Jennifer Brown Speaks on Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn, Jennifer Brown Consulting. Look me up for keynoting, for book buys. Look my team up for organizational help at Jennifer Brown Consulting. We certainly can do that and partner and do beautiful work with clients, just holding the hand right through the process. I just would say join our community any way you can and begin to listen, begin to learn, begin to network, begin to meet people that are different in many ways, both visible and invisible from who you are, and be enriched by that, because it is the most profound human experience that you can have.
Beautifully said. Don't let that fear of change hold you back.
Right.
Let's go busting right through that line. Jennifer, thank you so much for being on the show. Really enjoyed the conversation. And as I promised before we started, I said, I'm looking forward to learning a lot. And I did. So thank you. You were terrific.
Thank you so much.
We'll do it again as well as we can next time, everyone. Until then, stay safe.
Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, please rate and recommend it on iTunes, Outcast, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also get more information on this show and Rob at jollis.com.